Hi guys. So this is going to be for lesson 12, either the 15th or the 16th lesson, October 15th or October 16th. And it is entitled, "What Can We Do for You, Mr. Lindner?" So if you remember, we were on, let me share my Chrome tab. We were on the part where this white guy has knocked on the door and Benita opens it, okay, and to a white man with a briefcase and a piece of paper. So there's some things that, of course, immediately you have questions about. So we're going to go to 7B, character and conflict. We're going to go to subunit 2, a raisin in the sun. And we're going to go all the way down to lesson 12. What can we do for you, Mr. Lindner? The reading part right here is going to be on tab 2. Okay. And it's scene 3. All right. So if you'd like to follow along, I'm going to read to you the rest of this scene. The man says, how do you do, miss? I'm looking for a Mrs. He looks at the slip of paper. Mrs. Lena Younger. He stops short, struck dumb at the sight of the oblivious Walter and Ruth, who are still dancing with each other. Benita smooths her hair with slight embarrassment. Oh, yes, that's my mother. Excuse me. She closes the door and turns to quiet the other two. Ruth. Walter. Enunciating precisely but soundlessly. There's a white man at the door. They stop dancing. Ruth cuts off the phonograph. Benita opens the door. The man casts a curious, quick glance at all of them. Come in, please, Benita says. Thank you, the man says. My mother isn't here just now. Is it business? Yes, well, of a sort, the man says. Walter Freely, the man of house, says, have a seat. I'm Mrs. Younger's son. I look after most of her business matters. Ruth and Benita exchange amused glances. Man says, well, my name is Carl Lindner. Walter says, Walter Younger, this is my wife, Ruth, nods politely, and my sister. How do you do, Mr. Lindner says. Walter amiably, as he sits himself easily on a chair, leans forward on his knees with interest and looking expectantly into the newcomer's face, says, what can we do for you, Mr. Lindner? Lindner, some minor shuffling of the hat and briefcase on his knees, says, well, I am a representative of the Clybourne Park Improvement Association. Clybourne Park is the place where Mama put a down payment on a house, and it's a white neighborhood. Walter points, why don't you sit your things on the floor? Oh, yes, Mr. Lindner says, thank you. He slides the briefcase and hat under the chair. And as I was saying, I am from Clybourne Park Improvement Association, and we have had it brought to our attention at the last meeting that you people, or at least your mother, has bought a piece of residential property, 406 Clybourne. That's right, Walter says. Care for something to drink? Ruth, get Mr. Lindner a beer. Mr. Lindner upsets for some reason. Oh, no, really, I mean, thank you very much, but no, thank you. Ruth says, some coffee? Lindner says, thank you, nothing at all. Benita's watching the man very carefully. Mr. Lindner, well, I don't know how much you folks know about our organization. It's one of those community organizations set up to look after, things like a block upkeep and special projects. And we also have that. We call our new neighbors orientation committee. Benita dryly says, yeah? And what do they do? Lindner turns a little to her, and then returning the main force to Walter, he says, well, it's what you might call a sort of welcoming committee, I guess. I mean, I'm the chairman of the committee. Go around and see the people who move into the neighborhood and sort of give them the lowdown on the way we do things out at Clybourne Park. Benita, with appreciation of the two meanings, which escapes Ruth and Walter, says, uh-huh. Lindner says, and we also have the category of what the association calls special community problems. Yeah? And what are some of those? Benita says. Girl, let him talk, Walter says. Lindner says, thank you. I would sort of like to explain the thing in my own way. I mean, I want to explain to you in a certain way. Go ahead, Walter says. Yeah, well, I'm going to try to get right to the point. I'm sure we'll appreciate that in the long run. Yeah, Benita said. Be still now, Walter says. Well, Ruth innocently, would you like another chair? You don't look comfortable. Lindner says, more frustrated than annoying. No, thank you very much. Please, to get right to the point, I'm sure you people must be aware of some of the incidents which have happened in various parts of the city when colored people have moved into certain areas. Benita exhales heavily and starts tossing a piece of fruit up and down. Well, because we have what I think is going to be a unique type of organization in American community life, not only do we deplore that kind of thing, but we are trying to do something about it. Benita stops tossing and turns with a new and quizzical interest. We feel gaining confidence in this mission because of the interest in the face of the people he's talking to. We feel that most of the trouble in this world, when you come right down to it, most of the trouble exists because people just don't sit down and talk to each other. Ruth nods as she might in church. You can say that again, mister. Linder says, more encouraged by such affirmation, that we don't try hard enough in this world to understand the other fellow's problem, the other guy's point of view. Now that's right, Ruth says. Benita and Walter merely watch and listen. Linder says, yes, that's the way we feel out at Clybourne Park. And that's why I was elected to come here this afternoon and talk to you people. Friendly like, why the way people should talk to each other and see if we couldn't find some way to work this thing out. As I say, the whole business is a matter of caring about the other fellow. Anybody can see that you're a nice family, folks hardworking and honest, I'm sure. Benita frowns, quizzically, her head tilts. Today, everybody knows what it means to be on the outside of something. And of course, there is always somebody who's out to take advantage of people who don't always understand. What do you mean? Walter says. Well, you see, our community is made up of people who've worked hard as the dickens for years to build up that little community. They're not rich and fancy folk, just hard work and honest people who don't really have much, but those little homes and a dream of the kind of community they want to raise their children in. Now, I don't say we're perfect, and there's a lot of wrong in some of the things that they want, but you got to admit that a man, right or wrong, has the right to want to have the neighborhood he lives in a certain kind of way. At the moment, the overwhelming majority of our people out there feel that people get along better, take more of a common interest in the life of the community when they share a common background. I want you to believe me when I tell you that race prejudice simply doesn't enter into it. It is a matter of the people of Clybourne Park believing, rightly or wrongly, as I say, that for the happiness of all concerned, that our Negro families are happier when they live in their own communities. So what he's saying is, we don't want you there. Benita, with grand and bitter gesture, this, friends, is the welcoming committee. Walter, dumbfounded, looks at Linder. Is this what you came marching all the way over here to tell us? Linder says, well, now we've been having a fine conversation. I hope you'll hear me all the way through. Go ahead, man, Walter says. Linder, you see, in the face of all the things I have said, we are prepared to make your family a very generous offer. Benita says, 30 pieces and not a coin less. Walter says, yeah. Linder puts on his glasses and draws a form out of his briefcase. Our association is prepared through the collective effort of our people to buy the house from you at a financial gain to your family. Lord have mercy. Ain't this the living gall? Ruth said. All right. You through, Walter says. Linder says, well, I want to give you the exact terms of the financial arrangement. Walter says, we don't want to hear no exact terms of no arrangements. I want to know if you got any more to tell us about getting together. Linder takes off his glasses. Well, I don't suppose that you feel, never mind how I feel, Walter says. You got any more about how people ought to sit down and talk to each other? Get out of my house, man. He turns his back and walks to the door. Linder looks around at the hostile faces and reaching and assembling his hat and briefcase. Well, I don't understand why you people are reacting this way. What do you think you're going to gain by moving into a neighborhood where you just aren't wanted and where some elements, well, people can get awful worked up when they feel that their whole way of life and everything they've ever worked for is threatened. So basically he's insinuating that something's going to happen that's bad to them if they decide to go ahead and move into this house. Get out, Walter says. Linder at the door, holding a small card. Well, I'm sorry it went like this. Get out, Walter said. Linder almost sadly regarding Walter. You just can't force people to change their hearts, son. He turns and puts his cards on the table and exits. Walter pushes the door to with stinging hatred and stands looking at Ruth. Ruth just sits and Benita just stands. They say nothing. Mama and Travis enter. Mama says, well, this all the packing got done since I left out of here this morning. I testified before God that my children got all the energy of the dead. What time the moving men do? Benita says, 4 o'clock. You had a caller, Mama. She's smiling. Sure enough. Who? Mama said. Benita says, the welcoming committee. Walter and Ruth giggle. Mama innocently. Who? Benita says, the welcoming committee. They said they're sure gonna be glad to see you when you get there. Walter devilishly says, yeah, they said they can't hardly wait to see your face. And they laugh. Mama senses their facetiousness. What's the matter with you all? Walter says, hey, nothing the matter with us. We just telling you about the gentleman who came to see you this afternoon from Claiborne Park Improvement Association. What do you want? Mama says, Ruth in the same tone. To welcome you, honey. Walter says, he said they can't hardly wait. He said the one thing they don't have that they just dying to have out there is a fine family of fine colored people. To Ruth and Benita. Ain't that right? Ruth mockingly says, yeah, he left his card. Benita hands the card to Mama. In case. Mama reads and throws it on the floor, understanding and looking off as she draws her chair up to the table on which she has put her plant and some sticks and some cord. Father, give us strength, Mama says. Did he threaten us? Oh, Mama, they don't do it like that anymore. He talked brotherhood. He said everybody ought to learn how to sit down and hate each other with good Christian fellowship. She and Walter shake hands to ridicule the remark. Mama sadly says, Lord, protect us. Ruth says, you should hear the money those folks raised to buy the house from us. All we paid and then some. What they think we gonna do? Eat them? Benita says. No, honey, marry them, Ruth said. Mama shakes her head. Lord, Lord, Lord. Ruth says, well, that's the way the crackers crumble. Okay, so that's the end of the actual reading. What does Mr. Linder want during this scene? This is card 2, tab 2, card 2. To welcome the youngers to the neighborhood, to pay the youngers to stay out of the neighborhood, to ask the youngers to join the Improvement Association or insist the youngers move in that night. What actions does Mr. Linder take to get what he wants? What does he do? He tries to explain the situation. What does he do? Okay, tab 3. Select a character between Benita, Mama, Ruth, or Walter. Highlight the lines that show how your character reacts to Mr. Linder's visit. Okay, highlight the lines to show how your character reacts to Mr. Linder's visit. Make sure that you go through and look to see, okay, so in green, I've highlighted how Benita reacts, watching the man carefully, dryly, okay. Benita exhales heavily and starts tossing a piece of fruit. In red, I've highlighted how Walter reacts, dumbfounded. He talks tightly after he figures out why he's there. We don't want to hear no exact terms. He tells them to get out. In yellow, Mama senses their facetiousness, knows exactly, what they're trying to say. In blue, Ruth mockingly says, and Mama's in yellow. So go through, pick one of those to highlight some of the things that they do with their reactions. Okay, tab 4. We're going to absolutely write about our character that you pick's reactions. This is at least 100 words. Describe exactly how your character reacts to Mr. Linder's visit, and then explain why Mr. Linder represents an obstacle for your character. So he's trying to stop them from moving into the neighborhood. So you need to do at least 100 words, use race to explain why your character, how your character reacts, and why your character reacts that way. We are now going to skip to the exit ticket. And on the exit ticket, what is true and not true about Linder's visit and its impact on the youngers? True or false? By rejecting Linder's offer, the family feels that the move to the neighborhood will be fine. Now think about that. Seriously, it's not going to completely be fine because there are going to be people that don't want them there. Letter B, The Youngers go from listening patiently to feeling angry during Lindner's visit. Letter C, the Youngers are united in the rejection of Lindner's offer. And letter D, the Youngers are surprised that there is resistance to their planned move into a white neighborhood. Second part, what action do you think your character will take now against the obstacle posed by Mr. Lindner and the Clybourne Park? So if you picked Walter, is he going to push for going ahead with the move and not care about what everybody says? So depending upon which character you picked, what are they going to do now? Okay, Solo is another reading. Okay, and we are going to start from where we left off. Okay, we're going to start from where we left off, from 121, and I'm going to just finish the scene. Benita laughingly noticed what her mother is doing. Mama, what are you doing? Fixing my plant so it won't get hurt not on the way. Mama, you going to take that to the new house? Uh-huh. That raggedy looking old thing. Mama stops and looks at her. It expresses me. Mom, Ruth with delight says to Benita, so there, Miss Thing. Walter comes to Mama suddenly and bends down behind her and squeezes her in his arms in all its strength. She's overwhelmed by the tenderness and the suddenness of it. Though delighted, her manner is like that of Ruth and Travis. Look out now, boy, you make me mess up this thing. Walter, his face lit up. He slips down on his knees beside her. Mama, you know what it means to climb up in the chariot. Mama gruffly says, get on away from me now. Ruth says, psst, near the gift wrap package, trying to catch Walter's eyes. Walter says, what the old song say, Mama? Ruth says, Walter, now? She's pointing to the package. Walter speaks the line sweetly, playfully in his mother's face. I got wings, you got wings, all God's children's got wings. Boy, get out of my face and do some work. Walter says, when I go to get to heaven, gonna put on my wings, gonna fly all over God's heaven. Benita teasingly from across the room. Everybody talking about heaven ain't going there. Walter to Ruth, who is carrying the box across to them. I don't know. You think we ought to give her that? Seems to me she ain't being very appreciative. Mama, eyeing the box, which is obviously a gift, says, what is that? Walter says, taking it from Ruth, well, what do you all think? Should we give it to her? Ruth says, oh, she was pretty good today. Mama says, I'll good you. She turns her eyes to the box. Benita says, open it, Mama. She stands up, looks at it, turns, and looks at all of them, and then presses her hands together and does not open the package. Walter sweetly says, open it, Mama. It's for you. Mama looks in his eyes. It is the first present in her life without it being Christmas. Slowly, she opens her package and lists out one by one a brand new sparkling set of gardening tools. Walter continues. Ruth made up the note. Read it. Mama picks up the card. To our own Mrs. Miniver. Love from Brother, Ruth, and Benita. Ain't that lovely? Travis tugs at his father's sleeve. Daddy, can I give her mine now? All right, son, Walter says. Travis flies out to get his gift. Mama says, not I don't have to use my knives and forks no more. Walter says, Travis didn't want to go in with the rest of us, Mama. He got his own. And he's somewhat amused. We don't know what it is. Travis, racing back in the room with a large hat box, putting it in front of his grandmother. Here! Mama says, Lord have mercy, baby. You done and bought your grandmother a hat? Travis, very proud. Open it. She does and lists out an very elaborate, wide gardening hat, and all the adults break up at the sight of it. Ruth says, Travis, honey, what is that? Travis, who thinks it's beautiful and appropriate, says, it's a gardening hat like the ladies always have on in the magazines when they work in their gardens. Benita giggles. Travis, we were trying to make Mama Mrs. Miniver, not Scarlett O'Hara. Mama indignantly, what's the matter with you all? This here is a beautiful hat. I always wanted me one just like it. She pops it on her head to prove it to her grandson, and the hat is ludicrous and considerably oversized. Hot dog, go Mama, Ruth said. Walter doubles over. I'm sorry, Mama, but you look like you ready to go out and chop you some cotton, sure enough. They all laugh, except Mama, out of deference to Travis's feelings. Mama, gathering the boys, says, bless your heart, this is the prettiest hat I ever owned. Walter, Ruth, and Benita chime in noisily, festively, and insincerely. What are we all standing around here for? We ain't finished packing yet. Benny, you ain't packed one book. Beneatha says, that couldn't be the movers. The bell rings. It's not hardly too good yet. Beneatha goes into her room. Walter turns, stiffening. Wait, I'll get it. He stands and looks at the door. Mama, you expecting company, son? Walter says, just looking, yeah. Mama looks at Ruth, and they exchange innocent, unfrightened glances. Mama not understanding. Well, let them in, son. Beneatha from her room. We need some more string. Mama says, Travis, you run to the hardware and get some string cord. Mama goes out, and Walter turns and looks at Ruth. Travis goes to a dish for money. Why don't you answer the door? Ruth said. Walter suddenly bounced across the floor to embrace her, because sometimes it's hard to let the future begin. Stooping down in her face, I got wings, you got wings, all God's children's got wings. He crosses to the door and throws it open. Standing there is a very slight little man in a not too prosperous business suit with haunted, frightened eyes and a hat pulled down slightly brim up around his forehead. Travis passes between the men and exits. Walter leans deep in the man's face, still in his jubilance. When I get to heaven, gonna put on wings, gonna fly all over God's heaven. The little man just stares at him. Heaven? Where's Lily? Bobo says, this is Bobo at the door. He ain't with me. Walter says, oh, come on in. You met my wife? Bobo dumbly takes off his hat. Yes. Hi, you, Miss Ruth. Ruth says, hello, Bobo. Walter says, you right on time today, right on time. That's the way. Sit down. Let me hear. Ruth stands stiffly and quietly in back of them, as though somehow she senses death, her eyes fixed on her husband. Bobo, frightened, eyes on the floor, his hat in his hands. Could I please get a drink of water before I tell you about it, Walter Lee? Walter does not take his eyes off this man. Ruth goes blindly to the tap and gets a glass of water and brings it to Bobo. There ain't nothing wrong, is there, Walter says. Let me tell you, Bobo says. Man, did something go wrong? Bobo says, let me tell you, Walter Lee. Looking at Ruth and talking to her more than to Walter. You know how it was? I got to tell you how it was. I mean, first I got to tell you how it was all the way. I mean, about the money I put in, Walter Lee. Walter, with taut agitation. What about the money you put in? Well, it wasn't much as we told you. Me and Willie? I'm sorry, Walter. I got a bad feeling about it. I got a bad feeling. Man, what you telling me about all this for? Tell me what happened in Springfield. Springfield? Bobo says. Ruth, like a dead woman. What was supposed to happen in Springfield? Bobo says, the deal that me and Walter went into with Willie, me and Willie was going to go down to Springfield and spread some money around so we wouldn't have to wait so long for the liquor store license. That's what we were going to do. Everybody said that was the way you had to do it. You understand, Miss Ruth? Man, what happened down there, Walter says. Bobo says, I'm trying to tell you, Walter. Then tell me, damn it. What's the matter with you? Man, Bobo says, I didn't go no Springfield yesterday. Why not? Because I didn't have no reason to. Man, what are you talking about? Bobo says, I'm talking about the fact that when I got to the train station yesterday morning, 8 o'clock like we planned, Willie didn't ever show up. Why? Where was he? Where is he? That's what I'm trying to tell you. I don't know. I want 6 hours. I waited 6 hours. I called his house and I waited 6 hours. I waited in that train station 6 hours. That was all the extra money I had in the world. Walter says, gone? What do you mean Willie's gone? Gone where? You mean he went by himself? You mean he went off to Springfield by himself to take care of getting a license? Turns and looks anxiously. You mean maybe he didn't want too many people on the business down there? You know, Willie got his own ways. Maybe he was late yesterday and he just went on down without you. Maybe he's been calling you at home trying to tell you what happened or something. Maybe he just got sick. He's somewhere. He's got to be somewhere. We just got to find him. Me and you got to find him. Grabs Bobo. We got to. Bobo, angry, frightened. What's the matter with you, Walter? When a cat take off with your money, he don't leave you no road maps. Walter, turning sadly. Willie, don't do it. Please don't do it. Man, not with the money. Man, please, not with the money. Oh, God, don't let it be true. He's wandering around crying out for Willie and looking for him, or perhaps for help from God. I trusted you, man. I put my life in your hands. He starts to crumple down on the floor as Ruth just covers her face in horror. Mama opens the door and comes into the room with Beneatha. Man, he starts to pound the floor. That money is made out of my father's flesh. Bobo stands over him. I'm sorry, Walter. I had my life staked on this deal too. And he leaves. Mama says, son, she goes to him. Son, is it gone? I gave you $6,500. Is it gone, all of it? Beneath his money too? Lifts his head. Walter says, Mama, I never went to the bank at all. Mama, not wanting to believe him. You mean your sister's school money? You used that too, Walter? Yes, all of it. It's all gone. There's total silence. Ruth stands with her face covered with her hands. Benita leans forlornly against a wall, fingering a piece of red ribbon from her mother's gift. Mama stops and looks at her son without recognition, and then, quite without thinking about it, starts to beat him senselessly in the face. Benita goes to them and stops it. Mama, Benita says. Mama stops and looks at both of her children and rises slowly and wanders vaguely, aimlessly away from them. I seen him night after night come in and look at that rug and then look at me, the red showing in his eyes, the veins moving in his head. I seen him grow thin and old before he was 40, working and working and working like somebody old horse killing himself. And you give it all away? She raises her arms to strike him again. Benita says, Mama. And Mama says, oh, God. She looks up at him. Look down here and show me this strength. Mama, Benita says. Mama folds over. Strength. Mama, Benita says. Strength. Okay, very quickly, let's go through the questions. How is Walter acting toward the mother in this passage? Teasing and affection. Suspicious and distant. Sorry and eager. Cold and resentful. Before all of this happens at the very beginning, how is he acting? Card 5. Which of these statements best describes how Mama is feeling during the scene? She's annoyed and trying not to show it. She's tired but trying to act energetic. She's pleased but trying not to show it. She's disappointed but trying to act satisfied. So it's before Bobo comes in. How is she acting? Card 6. Judging from the context, what do Mama and Mrs. Miniver have in common? Both are getting ready to move. Both enjoy gardening. Both are related to the family. Both do not like gifts. Card 7. When Bobo first comes in, Walter immediately suspects something, seems excited, doesn't seem to want him there, or seems angry. Card 8. As Bobo continues to speak, Ruth seems excited, bored, cheerful, or worried. And in card 9, what do you think has happened to Willie? Use information from the text to support your thinking. Obviously, Willie has taken off with the money. So what do you think he's doing? Okay, so that would be the end of that presentation. And that is the end of the lesson. Your actual grades are going to be from the exit ticket solo and the writing. So I hope that everyone has a great day. I will see you soon. Hope to see you in class.